Okay, so I think I'm live. Yes, I'm live. Peace, everyone. Peace, Shabbat Shalom. You know, good day to you. You know, however you exchange niceties. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the space. And welcome also to those who will be viewing this later. After it's already been broadcasted. Um, my name is Antonio, Aki Antonio, and we are coming again with another installment of Shema Anu. Now, I know for the past four strongs, you have been graced with Chief Yuya and his breakdowns on Genesis, right? The book of Genesis. Oh, peace, Sister Kashia. Give thanks. Shalom, loud and clear. And that reminds me, there is a 20-second delay. So if you post a comment or anything in the chat, you gotta give me at least 20 seconds to see it. Okay. But yeah, Chief Yuya has been breaking down the book of Genesis. I think he did the first four chapters, and it's been very eye-opening and very edifying in terms of our studies and learning more about how to study, and not just what to study. So I see everyone is filing in. Peace, Sister Niall. Peace, Brother Chris. Peace, Sister Deidre Sully. Peace, Sister Karen Mother's Ill. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And for today, we're going to be continuing where we left off, where the sisters left off. They were in the first chapter on marriage. So just a quick recap. We've been dealing with the aspect of family in the Anu way, and we are now on the aspect of marriage, which is a step in the process of betrothal, courtship, betrothal, marriage. So in the first earliest aspects of peace, Sister Markshall, peace, Cassie Derwin. In the first aspects, right, the earliest aspects of your courtship, you're basically going through your discovery process. So you're getting to know each other, you're getting to know what your inclinations are, if you have any chemistry, your personal history, things like that. And you're also getting to know how compatible the two of you are, right? Second phase, you may get a little deeper. You go on outings with a chaperone, and you're basically experiencing each other in different settings. Maybe you're experiencing each other, how you view a movie or how you are greeted in the community, how your elders treat you, how the children treat you, how the men treat you, how the women treat you. You get to see each other from various different angles. So this is your discovery process, and near the end of this courtship, you begin to discuss more real world application of what it is that you've been learning about each other and if you are a right fit, right? Because peace, Sister Manira, peace, to everyone coming in the space. And let me backtrack and just, give a big up to Chief Yuya, who is the author of this text that we've been breaking down over the past few months. And it's the Anu way, right? So the Anu way is basically right? This is the foundations. So what I want to do before we get back into it, and I'll go a little bit more over the recap, and then we'll get into today's segment. I just want to read a condensed excerpt from the Anu way. So I'm gonna look away from you now. This book is not to be read only once. Read the words of this book of knowledge and wisdom out loud. Discuss the convictions of this work with your Anu brothers and sisters. Share this information with your people. This publication should be read daily, and every line of this book can be taken out of context and studied on the strength of its own potential. The truth is to be deliberated, right? And, again, when we're dealing with courtship, we have to look at the fact that this isn't dating, for one. And secondly, there's no obligation to move into the phase that we're talking about now, right? Marriage. That is discussed in the final phases of your courtship because you've been, looking at each other from all of these various different angles, and you've been determining your compatibility. Do we have chemistry? Do we have the same goals? Do we have the same mission? Do we think about culture the same way? Do we see, uh, um, excuse me, do we see the way that children should be raised the same way? Do we see education the same way? And on down the list. Are we compatible in that sense? And can we sort of can we agree to move as a unit, right? And join and move as a unit. So that's what I want to really stick to today, that theme, because that's one of the main things that I saw from this aspect, which is the signing ceremony. You're basically declaring yourselves as a unit. So at the juncture directly before the consummation of two partners, there's a signing ceremony. The ceremony is to let the community know that the individuals involved have now proceeded to become one entity and should be given the respect and recognition that the rite of passage requires. The marital event need not be a large formality. The annual requisite is that only 3 people need to be present for the contractual section of a marriage: the man, the woman, and the witness. They're the only ones who need to be present for the validation of this agreement or the nuptial ceremony. Once the nuptial contracts are signed and witnessed, the individuals involved are free to consummate their marriage on the physical level at their discretion. Oh, peace, Sister Precious Stephanie. Peace, Emma. So yeah, so now you're free to consummate your union on a physical level, right? But before you become a unit on the physical level, you have to become a union, on the spiritual and the mental level as well, you know. And a lot of people leave out the spiritual and the mental and they go straight for the emotional and physical. And that's where it kind of gets shaky, right? This is a new way foundation, and the foundation tends to be off when it comes to dating in the secular world. So I just wanted to ask, right? What have your past relationships been based on? Were they based on logic or emotion? And I'll put that in the chat. So I'll give you all a moment to respond, and I'm going to continue, just with the breakdown, line by line, how it is that we become a unit and what that actually means. And I know some of you are probably wondering, where's our Cruz? Right? It's usually someone else here with me, my cousin Abu Cruz. Well, basically, there's been some changes in the format. So you're going to see some familiar faces, and you're going to see some faces that are a little less familiar um, on this segment of Anu and what it is that we do here. Okay, so okay, everyone's still being nice and piecing up the place. Yeah, so basically, what it is that we want to discover about each other is, are we compatible? And the way we deal with compatibility is we typically go by how we feel about one another. That's the first thing, right? So to answer your question, Sister Deidre, what have your past relationships been based on? Were they logically or emotionally driven? I'm gonna put it right there. Yeah, so this ceremony is to let the community know that you're now one entity and you should be given that respect. And the respect is important because you've gone through a rites of passage. When I think of rites of passage, I usually now I think of Roots, the breakdown that Aki Low had done. Oh, peace, Chief. Peace, peace. The breakdown that Aki Low had done on the movie Roots, and that first episode where you have the rites of passage scenes, right? And you have them going to the forest, they're taken into the forest. You have them meet the Kintongo. I always like that part, like, don't mispronounce my name, and after they get into that space, they realize that I'm not, um, I'm not under my mother's covering anymore. I'm talking about the young men. I'm being trained on the science of manhood and what it takes to be a man based on you know, um, my own culture's standards. Because everyone's rites of passage will be different based on their culture, based on their clan, where they come from, and what it is that they're looking to do. Um, what we want to discover here is, are you even considered, eligible for marriage? Are you respected by your community? And going through that process of discovery helps you to understand that before you even get into a union, because people can hide things up until the point of union, and then they sort of just let it all hang out. Woman may gain 50, 60 pounds because she was only keeping herself in shape to get a man. The man may be a little less competent that he was making himself out to be, a little less prepared, a little less organized. This courtship process allows you to see through all of that, right? So moving on to the signing ceremony, the first sentence reads, the ceremony is to let the community know that you're proceeding to become one entity. And the second sentence says, this doesn't need to be a large formality, which is another thing, like Chief Uda usually says, whatever Western culture does, just do the opposite and you'll be fine. And with Western society, I've always noticed that the focus is on the ceremony itself, and then the woman, then the family, and then the man. The man is usually the last person, and they typically celebrate their last day of freedom by letting it all hang out. The night before. It's almost expected for them to purge all of that stuff out rather than going through a graduated process and getting to that point. And they don't have a good success rate. So peace, our Cruz. We're just talking about you. Peace. Shabbat shalom. So the Anu requisite is that only 3 people need to be present for this contractual section of a marriage, as opposed to the hundreds of relatives that you don't even know, you don't see them every day, and you probably won't see them until it's a funeral. The man and the woman and the witness are the only ones who need to be present for validation of the agreement of the nuptial ceremony. So that's like 3 times. You don't need a lot of people, So it's very stressed that the importance of the union is the fact that these are 2 units coming together. All right. So I'm going to going to get into it a little bit more, but first I want to see the chat. Sister Kashia says they were based on emotional and instant gratification. What we looked like together, how we made each other feel in that moment. No real logic or foundation. Yeah, I've had a couple of relationships that were like that, and I'm usually the one who's more reserved in that regard, and I typically fall back. I try to fall back whenever I see any foolishness, but I didn't realize that the reason for the foolishness is because you didn't really go through the courtship, right? You didn't go through even a discovery process of saying, who is this person that I'm looking to physically join with? Because we've been so desensitized to that act that we think There's nothing sacred about it or nothing binding about it. Let's see. My Precious says, to answer the question, prior to Anu, my past relationships were based upon logical perspectives and emotion filled fantasy. Yeah, saying, oh, we're gonna, gonna grow up, we're gonna have this car, we're gonna have this amount of kids, they're gonna become doctors and lawyers, and next thing you know, he can't change a tire. you know. Um, Chief US says all past relationships, platonic, familial, amorous, have been based around social cognition and emotional checkpoints to let me know if I'm asserting the right attachments and concepts or not. Yes, that's I can. It's always a common sense approach with Chief, but yeah, you have those checkpoints, and it's similar to me. Mine was more based out of I don't want to get attached to someone if I don't really know them, you know. And I didn't allow myself to be known at the same time. So I kind of, you know, cut my feet and cut my legs from under me when I do that. And I have learned over the years that the more I reveal myself and the more authentic I am, the easier it is to determine, who's for me or not, because I'm being authentic. Now they can't hide in the fact that I'm also trying to hide. Sister Naya says my past relationships were based on logic and became emotional before they ended. Okay, yeah, yeah, same thing, Sister Kishia. Can you explain that, Sister Naya? How did that happen? How does that work? Logical first and then emotional. Um, Sister Manira says, my past relationships were emotionally based. There was no logic in my choices due to lack of proper guidance and or choices to not receive the light from a righteous man. Huh. Yeah, I have seen that happen with female relatives and just with, you know, females in general who I've encountered and, worked alongside of. And they basically explain their mind issues, or you hear them talking about it and asking people for advice, like, what should I do? Or they're just telling stories about, you know, how something happened that could have been easily avoided. But it's almost like a thrill to be in a dramatic relationship. Not saying that you were in that type of relationship, Sister Manira, but or Money B, aka Money B. But yeah, it does happen to where lack of guidance can lead you to emulating what you see around you or just going off of emotions. And you have people that can try to manipulate you in that way. And also, you can manipulate people as well. It's very I don't know, it's a very tricky situation. I've always looked at situations like that from the outside in, like these two people are preparing to go to court, not the good court, which is where courtship comes from, but they're preparing to go to court and they're building a case on each other. So everything that's said is remembered just so it can be brought up later in an argument or in a disagreement. Sister Niall, we asked each other questions about what we wanted in life, started on those paths, but the relationship wasn't respected, which led to emotions and parting ways because we weren't doing what we said we would do. Hmm. I'm getting confused just reading that sentence. I can imagine that there was some confusion in the midst, when you made that shift from logic to emotion. And I'd love to hear more about it. You can put it in the chat. What were, the causes and effects of all of those? It sounds all emotional. Yeah, what were the causes and effects of all of these things that were happening? I'm interested in knowing the types of questions you asked. But to move on, I wanted to touch on a couple more things. One of the things I wanted to touch on was the aspect of harmony, right? Because we're talking about two people becoming a single unit. And I wanted to go into the 14 keys and get like a brief definition of harmony, right? So it says the vibratory contracts made to compose what we call reality are the nuclear bases of harmony. Our experiences are comprised of a series of contracts that interweave among truth and illusion, or non-being and being. Harmony is a design tapestry of differing vibrations to construct an idyllic blend. This cosmic phenomenon requires diversified vibrations. The stipulation of diversity does not negate from the importing in unison complex forces and concepts, and finds a point at which they can converge at each other's crux. This can happen between any given number of units, right? So for this to work, or for this work, we should remember that individuals and groups are units that carry their own vibratory tone autonomously and corporately. So, for example, what we call music is a harmonic blend of sound and silence. And there's also variations of those sounds and the lengths of those silences. So you can see right there that becoming a unit doesn't necessarily mean that you're this one, you know, weird thing with four arms and four legs. You're coming together um, harmoniously. You're complements, you're not opposites, and you're not mashing these two elements together in a very haphazard way. You know, Chief Yuya says, my criteria is still the same, but as I've wizened up, my understanding of the right social context and emotional interpretation become more intellectually relevant. I'm still evolving in this. Yeah, yeah, it's it becomes difficult if you don't if you stop evolving, because you realize how irrelevant things that you thought were like axioms, things that you thought were truths that would never change, you know so that's a very important aspect of it. Sister Naya says the questioning is what made me think it was logical, but you are shedding light. I can be wrong, and I may have just been denying emotions. All right. So, what did you learn? Since we're shedding all this good light, share with the rest of the class. I know she's chuckling. But yeah, I also wanted to touch on something from solutions for dysfunctional family relationships, but I'm going to post another question in the chat, and I should have had these pre-typed, but usually there's two of us, and one of us can cover for the fact that there was some level of unpreparedness. But the question is, have you ever made an important agreement without a third party witness? And what was the result of that? Sorry for all of the clickety clackety that you hear. Okay, so that's the second question. Again, have you ever made an important agreement without a third party witness? And what was the result of that? How did that turn out? I can remember one that I had made. It was like, I was like maybe 18, going on 19. Didn't have much experience. You helped me could have typed this for you. The covering initiative doesn't just benefit the woman. Very true. Very true. Um, Sister Naya says, learning to be more free in my feelings. less hard. I discussed this today with my covering. Okay. All right. All right. So yeah, one of my first murals that I did, I I knew nothing about painting murals on walls. I barely knew anything about painting. And yeah, Sister Kishi, I got played. I played myself. you know. So I basically got charged to I was asked to paint a mural at a dance school because when I was going to pick up one of my sisters, I had to wait, and I had a drawing that I was working on because I'm also a visual artist. I've been drawing since I was very young. So I was working on a portrait, and it was the first time that I had ever done something so advanced. So one of the receptionists saw it, and she was like, "Hey, can you have you ever painted on a wall before?" And I was like, "No." So she said, I'm going to talk to my boss and see if I can get you to do it. In the meantime, can you do like a rough draft? So I said, okay. So I did a rough draft, and it was like I was into graffiti back then. So it was like a graffiti style, and the word was dance. And I put it together, and we, got started. I had no idea that you could make a lot of money from from murals, and I also had no idea how big it was going to be. That was when I realized that I like to draw big stuff. So a few months down the line, I learned a lot during the process, but I was pretty slow on the uptake, and I took some time to put it all together. And I kept having idea after idea, and I was so interested in doing something cool that I forgot the business aspect. And when I did some research, I got curious, and I was like, "Oh, you should have charged this." I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't charge anywhere near that. I charged like a fraction." And you know, that was when I realized how unforgiving business can be. Right? You make an agreement, you got to stick to that agreement. So doing your due diligence beforehand was something that I had learned the hard way because I did all of that work, spent all that time, put all that emotion into this piece that I still remember, still a great piece, but I didn't get compensated the way I should have because I didn't have a third party to say, hey, maybe you should take a different another look at that price. And I played myself, and yes, yeah, right, played myself. Couldn't even be mad at the smooth say, couldn't even be mad at the smooth joke. Yeah, that happened. Chief Yuya says, yeah, the spiritual ecosystem and my egg bait have witnessed every contract I've made. As a result, I have never been able to escape the karma of the malevolent contracts someone always sees. Right? Was it malevolent on the other person's part or your part, Chief? Sister Manira says, though Yah is a witness to all, there were many agreements I made without consulting the Most High. Those experiences were where I learned the hardest lessons. Tell me about it. Chief Yuya says they still paid you to educate you in art, business, and research. You still came out ahead. Yeah, thanks. That was the way I had to look at it, sort of. But it was like to console myself. Well, I learned a lot, you know, single tail. But yeah, give thanks, Sister Kishia. Like comment and share, and yeah, those I'm gonna see for myself experiences. Yeah, and I also learned that being paid an experience is um, not fun. Sometimes your experience is learning how to get paid what you're worth. That could be an experience in itself. Top tier speakers, peace. So moving on, I wanted to look at two different things, right? We're still talking about the marriage contracts. Um, but what is this contract for? This contract is to build or to create a family, right? Man, woman, child, or children, or man, women, children, depending on how your family is structured. We're going to get into that later, in later chapters. But for right now, just a brief overview of what a family is. Family can be defined as the fundamental group of any society, which consists of two or more individuals with the same goals and objectives. With the same goals and objectives. Besides, as someone said, I think it's on Crash Course, but it was a funny term, instead of just scootily pooping, instead of just getting together on a physical level, we both want this really badly. And then afterwards you realize you don't even remember why you wanted it. When you turn it over and it's like, who are you? you know? But yeah, and that's more than just how their face looks, but some people are very different. When you see them over time, over a certain period of time, you realize that there's different sides to the person. And it's not just that best foot forward that you met wherever you met them. So family can be defined as a fundamental group or society of any society which consists of two or more individuals with the same goals and objectives. Originally, family was defined by those who serve the household. This is an old definition with New World relevancy. If the family or home is an entity unto itself, the members who reside under this entity should show supreme allegiance to it. As they serve it, it serves them. How this family is served is defined by, again, home culture. How do you structure your family? How do you structure your home? All of this is discussed in the betrothal phase. In the pre-betrothal phase, the very last phase of the courtship. How are we going to discuss this union? How are we going to approach this union that we're beginning to create? And you have to discuss it. You have to go over it because it begins in the mind. And if you're not on the same wavelength, if you're both saying, okay, we're both going to try and create a family, but the man has a different um, idea than what you have in mind, right? Or you have a different idea than what he has expressed to you and you don't tell him, right? If there's not like full disclosure that you should have had in the very first phase of courtship, then there's going to be a lot of confusion created, not just between you, but that confusion is going to be passed down to your children because they are also created in the mind first, right? And I'm just going to go to the chat for a second. Albert Cruz says, I was encouraged to resign from a post before due to a one-on-one conversation with an individual in an administrative position. When the big day of separation came, the company, it was me only. No check, no job, no pension, no support. Like you thought before, Chief, these spirits at times do not support you after a time. I guess that's with reference to Chief's comment. But yeah, Abu Cruz, when people try to coax you to make a major life decision and they don't have enough skin in the game, um, it's easy for them to say anything. And I'm saying that from experience as well. A lot of people can try to convince you to get off of your path or stop going in the direction that you're going in. And they have no business saying anything to you. Like it has nothing to do with them. But for me, it happened when I opened my mouth to the wrong people. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. This is what I'm looking towards completing. This is what I've already started, and these are the steps that I'm taking. And then I'm like, well, instead of doing it that way, why don't you do it like this? And they won't even remember that you told them your life's vision or plan after they walk away from you. Like 3-4 minutes after the conversation is done, you're here making these life decisions in your mind. Meanwhile, they're trying to figure out what they're gonna eat. If KFC is still open. Chief says malevolence on my part at times, theirs at others. Sometimes you creep low, tuck in your righteous Jesus piece in your shirt. You travel to do some dirt, but there's always a witness for justice. Right, right. Yeah. I remember you saying it was a segment that you did earlier, Chief, where you had said that you were on your way to court and you did something out of character, which is you almost tripped, and you said you looked around to see if someone saw it, and you know you heard your ancestors say, "Someone will always see you, my son. Someone will always see you." Yeah. So yeah, those spirits at times um, stop supporting you after a while if you do things that are out of character. What am I supporting? Who's this? Just similar to rolling over and waking up to someone who you never took the time to respect, or someone you never took the time to see the source of. Ra to the source, and or light and spec to see. You didn't respect them enough, and now you're rolling over and you're seeing a different side of them, and you're almost resentful that they're not the fantasy that you fell for last night. Um, yeah, so to continue, right? We were just going over witnesses, right? Having a witness present for your agreement. The man and the woman and the witness are the only ones who need to be present for the validation of the agreement of this nuptial ceremony. Once those contracts are signed and witnessed, the individuals involved are free to consummate their marriage on the physical level at their discretion, right? And for those of you who may have just, you know, tuned in, or those of you who may have, you know, gotten lost in the sauce and you checked out for a minute and you came back and you're just catching up. This is a big this is a big step because you've been building towards it for like 3 to 9 months, at least. You've been getting to know someone for months. You've been having daily check-ins with someone for months. You've been reviewing your cultural history, family history, personal history. You've been going over all of these things. Now you have a full 360 degree of this person in your mind, beyond their physicality. So when it comes time for that physical union, it's a very, I don't think there's any virgins on this page. It's going to be very different than what happened when you were, just jumping from bed to bed, schooly pooping. I found to use that word at least 5 times today. Chief US says, right. I remember that day clear going to court to face a judge on an assault charge, but it was self-defense. I wanted to do evil and really assault like I know I can, but I tripped and was warned. But yeah, that's that's a very good warning, you know, because you get the picture, but you didn't have to go through a lot of pain to get it. I think I was just speaking with someone about this. You get your messages in ways that you will receive them. Random signs don't just happen, or at least I'll say the Almighty is speaking to you all the time, and you pick it up based on what kind of frequency you're on. And once you realize what's being said, now you're like on the karmic chopping block. You had to register with all your items, and it's like, you sure you want to pay for that? Yeah, but yeah, that's basically what I wanted to cover today, and I'm very thankful for all of you who have come out and answered all the questions. But do you all have any questions? I know we usually do this thing where where the presenters would ask questions to the chat. But does anyone in the chat have any questions about what we've just covered? You know, that's something that I want it to be a bit more interactive and not just, me reading from this book, we're building. So yeah, do any of you all have any questions about what we've just covered? Or was there anything that stood out to you from this segment? So I'll give it, 20 seconds. But yeah, let me just scroll back up, see if I missed anything. Yeah, Sister Naya, I'm also interested in the story. Something's not adding up, you know. And I say that because there's also another aspect of forming agreements, and that's when you have a breakdown in the agreement, right? You get together and you say, we're going to do this and you're going to do that. You're going to actually build something, and then something happens, right? Something always happens, but something happens to make you realize that this is, you know, this is a deal breaker. Um, Oh, Chief Yuya says yes. When you are all reading this text or hearing it, are you visualizing what happens next or only stuck on what you did not do in the past? Very, actually, let me put that up there. Very good question. Yeah, for me, I used to when I first gotten introduced to this information, this is like enlightenment and transformation, foundational Fridays, underground Thursdays. I was very I reflected a lot more than I was more reflective than I was forward thinking. And it wasn't until I started putting myself in a position to apply it and continually live by these um, this text or even hearing it, it was like, okay, so now that I'm doing this, I didn't realize that I didn't know what comes next. So what comes after I do this part, or what comes after I do that part? And usually in motion, you get your answers, but every now and then you gotta pause and take a step back because like get lost in the sauce. Like, hold on, I might be moving too fast. Am I skipping steps? I want to get to this point, but I don't want to get to this point in a way where I'm gonna have to backtrack later. You know, so yeah, the visions have been coming more as I apply it. If I don't apply it and I just read it, I'll only remember what I did. But as you begin to apply it and make those changes, for me personally, you know, you start to see changes in your demeanor. You know, I noticed that my spine was straighter when I was walking. My voice got a bit more solid. It wasn't as shaky as before. Certain situations like anxiety and anything like that, they went away because I wasn't worrying about the future. I was planning for it. So that's like what I got from all of these different texts, and I have to jump back and forth between each of them. It's like, okay, I have this question, but I think I saw it in the other book. Okay, I just got the answer, but now that makes me think of something in the next book. So it's like, I don't know, I have fun studying now. I had always enjoyed studying, but at the same time I was very lackadaisical with it. But now it's more systematic. um, Sister Kashia says the vision is set on what happens next. Being stuck on the past is not growth. What am I doing now to be considered a woman in Anu, to enter a courtship and willfully move forward in union? Yeah, very good point. And being stuck is evident in the way one speaks, remains in victim mode, no reciprocity in the space you're in, no character development. That's like a big red flag. You're the same person you were um, when you got introduced to this information. So are you really taking it in, or you just, even if you're just going for the ride, you're still gonna change. So what are you doing? Um, Sister Deidre says, I visualize what's next because I am called to evolve and be better and reflect the light of my current mate. Okay. Uh, Abba Cruz said, in truth, Chief, it was more than difficult to visualize at first how it would look to move as a man should from preparation to action until I was able to start building with Anu men and covering Anu women. Exactly. When you start, putting things into motion, or even when you're charged to be put into motion and given responsibility over certain things, you realize that the way that you handle it has to be done with integrity, and that integrity is based on what it is that you're studying. So you gotta study now, right? So you have to study now. But yeah, I've gone through the same thing. You know, the covering initiative was a big fire that was lit under me because it forced me to really be less selfish in my thinking. You know, my forward thinking was always based on, okay, what's going to happen to me, um, and the people that I care about. You know, who's this new person now? Until you realize, oh, this person really benefits from, this person really benefits from just building with me. And I actually benefit from being responsible to them and for them. So now that helps you to grow even more. And the studies that you have to do as a man to make sure that you're able to properly cover, that builds you up even more. High five covering, yo. Giving virtual high fives, cruising and shit. um, Another thing that I also wanted to touch on actually was another section of solutions, and that would be, what is your life purpose, right? And I usually start it that way. That's what I call this page because it's the question that jumps out to me the most. And this is from the questionnaire that was given to, like, so you got a rep for House of Perez. All right, I hear you. This was presented as some points of scenarios that you can cover, when you're going through that first part of a courtship. And of course, it's going to be coming back up later in your actual contract, right? A lot of the things that you cover during your courtship are things that you may not have ever really thought about before. You get asked a certain questions like, whoa, no one ever asked me, if I have any debt before, before I got into it. Usually I can sort of sneak that later and co-op them into getting me, my debts paid off. I'm a gambler or anything. It's like, you have your karma, but you have your karma tucked away into this little corner, and you're gonna spring it on the person when it's too late for them to divest from the relationship, which is really kind of sneaky and sinister. You know, I have this big, um, like I said, debt, or I have a drinking problem, or I have an abusive spouse that's who stalks me, but I'm not gonna tell you about them until they blindside you on the road. Stuff like that. It doesn't have to be that extreme, but we keep these little secrets, and it usually doesn't come up until after the marriage if you're doing it the secular way. you know. But give thanks to Chief Yuya for posing that question. And yeah, some questions that we can go over in the courtship phase. What's your life purpose? Are you spiritual or religious? What age did you become a man or a woman? How did you know? Was it verified by anyone else? Right? That one stuck out to me when I was reading the segment, because was it verified by anyone else was the same as having a witness for this signing ceremony. This witness isn't like some Joe Blow off the street while you're having, like, I don't know, eloping. You have someone from your community who's going to witness this union, and this person knows just as well as you know the required qualities of a man and a woman, and they're there to verify and signify that, yeah, I've witnessed these two go through this experience, and I know that they are right for one another. I know that they can build a strong family. I know that they can have sane children and be an asset to the community and not a liability or like a problem factory. This house, anyone with this last name is either a drug dealer or a pimp. You better not mess with any of their family members, or it's going to be like a plague on your life. You're not creating those types of families, you know, unless, there could be a plague to you if you're not in the community. You mess with the community, then, man, you don't want that to happen to you. But yeah, you have to have people within your community who are witnesses to it. You're not calling your best friend from high school who you haven't seen in 15 years. You're calling someone who you consider your brother or your sister or your chief or a jegna, or someone who's very intimate with what it is that you are and what it is that this person is. And I think it's a beautiful thing to witness, just like in the earlier segments, it's a beautiful thing to get to know your fellow Anu brother or sister. It's also a very beautiful thing to witness those two coming together and creating something um, very powerful and very productive, and very advantageous to have in the community and to interact with. So I think that was everything from in the chat. Um, yeah, that was what I wanted to touch on. Those were the points that I wanted to touch on, and I give thanks for you all. Just riding with me. Sun is down, so Shabbat Shalom. Officially, and I will see you all in the future. Chief Yuya says, if someone is crafty enough to hold information that could be a deal breaker or harmful, they are not marriageable. In erratic times like now, people will fool you just to have a safe place to stay. Yeah, yeah, that is you see that in a lot of like zombie movies or post-apocalyptic types of scenarios where people come out and play the damsel in distress. Meanwhile, they got like 6 or 7 brothers that are scoping out your place while you take them to your base of operation where all your stuff is. You know, People will fool you to have a safe place to stay or just to take your stuff. You know, but yeah, that is very true. They're not marriageable. And you don't find that out until later if you don't have that discovery process. What are you? Someone who's that crafty, they usually slip up if you put them in a space where they can be caught off guard because they don't realize that you're trying to see you're trying to respect them. I'm trying to respect you. I'm trying to see who and what you are. If you won't let me do that, then it's already a red flag. You got some skeletons in your closet. And a lot of people think that once you see someone naked, you know all that there is to know about them. And that's not the case. Some people get naked to hide the other stuff. Yeah. So yeah, give thanks, Abu Cruz. But yeah, that is it for what it is that I wanted to share. Like, share, and subscribe. I think, could be wrong, but I think Chief is on tomorrow. Tomorrow's first Shabbat. Um, exactly. The homeless sexual movement was in full swing even before all of this mess. Imagine a person seeing you have food, shelter, protection, and defendable water. Boy, yeah, serious times. Very serious times. And a lot of people are going to be caught unprepared. And you're going to see the animal um, and everyone coming out. Like that Fela Kuti song, Beast of No Nation. This uprising will bring out the beast in us. It makes me think about that. Yes, Sister Kashia, the homeless sexual movement. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. You're on tomorrow, right, Chief, for Shabbat? I think you are. Um, will it be Will it be on this channel, Anu Life Global, or will it be Chief Yuya? The tissue wars. Tissue wars. Yeah, tissue wars. Yeah, it's already started. Okay, cool. Yeah, Chief will be sharing this coming noon. So yeah, so we will definitely reconvene for that. Hopefully, we'll see you all there. Peace to you all in this space. Peace to you all who are coming in later and catching up. Hopefully, everything is edifying and clear. And if it is not, please leave a comment and someone will respond to you. Okay, and just to be clear, Chief will be, I just saw Chief will be presenting from our New Life Global Ministries. So the same channel tomorrow at noon. Okay, not the same bad time, but the same bad place. Yeah, Abu Cruz. Imagine what's gonna happen regarding the water and non-diseased air. Yeah, that's gonna be crazy. Selling air to people. Yeah, that's like a sick that's a sick concept. But anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. Shabbat, I gotta rest. So to that family, to that everyone. Peace to you all.